So I talked about this many times before, and that's to do with the decline of birth rates, both in Ireland and across the Western world, across Europe, across the world too. It's huge historic low in the birth rate in terms of the fertility rate too. It's very very low, and we're not allowed to really in society. In Irish society, you hear the media talk about it's low. It's like a mystery. It's like it's a mirage, pretty much, that we don't know what's causing it. We're not allowed to ask any questions. Of course, you're not allowed to ask any questions because there must be, because it'd be different if it was an isolated incident. Take for example, it was only in Ireland. It wasn't in England. It wasn't in Finland. It wasn't in Italy. It wasn't everywhere. But it's literally in every country. So there must be some explanation to why. We get into some of the explanations here. Obviously, what we're allowed to discuss, because in modern society, the Western democracies now, you're not allowed to ask many questions. But it's a very worrying trend. It'd be different if it was only one country in the world. We could say, yeah, this is an isolated incident. But it's literally, I will go through some of it here. It's not an isolated incident. This is only a small fraction of what I'm pretty much talking about. Just to start off, in Japan, has the lowest population in a century, has the lowest birth rate in a century. There's a huge amount of people aging, the same as Ireland, the same across the Western world, but there's not enough people being born. There's more people dying now in Japan than being born, and that's obviously a huge worry. In Poland, just in Europe, it's recorded the lowest in a long, long time, even under communist rule, except it's the lowest now. It shouldn't really. And in China too, we see a drop in the birth rate. Take for example Russia at the moment, 200-year low in the birth rate. 200 years. Think about that. In Turkey, the birth rates are going pretty much extinct. Kazakhstan, the lowest in a decade. Ireland is pretty much, even just speaking of Ireland, my home country here, even just the year's not finished here, 2025, but there's already a 1.6% decrease in the birth rate from last year. Just think about 1.6, already nearly 2% in just a year. There's a 2% drop, and this is only halfway through the year. Take for example England and Wales and Jersey, it's small island in the Channel, the lowest literally in decades, hundreds of years nearly at this stage. And take for example, I just mentioned Finland at the beginning of this. Finland, even though they've put a huge amount of programs, baby care, etc., etc., many supports for families that have children, it's the historic lowest, the lowest in Finland's history since it became independent in 1918. We could speak about other countries, talk about Denmark, Norway, Sweden. It's literally everywhere, pretty much, unfortunately, across the whole Western world, across every nearly country in Asia too. The majority of countries, the same in Australia, the same in New Zealand, the same in the majority of the United States. It's very low. The only places it's not low, it's really in Africa, in some parts of Africa, and in some parts of South America. It's not too bad, but still not great. But there's many first of all, there's many things to do with the Western world, I could say, about in Ireland. And maybe it does have a degree to do with it. Obviously a lot of people are not having children now until they're very old pretty much, because they can't afford to live themselves, let alone have children. And that's, it's a worry across the Western world that people can't afford to have kids. And that's the reason why people putting off having kids, because they can't afford it. In a lot of the Western world, we see it in Ireland. But also, it wouldn't be this dramatic of a decrease across the world, as I say. And it's all to do with other things that's going on. We're not allowed to talk, but there should be questions asked about why this is happening. Because again, as I said at the beginning, if this was an isolated incident in, say, Galway or something like that, this in Galway, County Galway in Ireland, that the birth rate was very low, but in every other part of Ireland was very high, and across Europe was very high, you could say that was an isolated incident. But it's literally, I named off 8 places, 9 places here, 10 places, that literally the lowest in decades, some in some recorded history. And the media not asking any questions, how is this the case? But as I said in the beginning, that's one of the suggestions in Ireland here. And to be honest with you, it probably is true in Ireland, because you would have to be, because at the moment there was a study done in Ireland, you would nearly need to spend nearly €1,000, so 1,500 for a child now in Ireland to keep them well, to keep them fed, to keep them clothed, to keep the roof over their head. You nearly have to spend 1,500 a month to keep your child, one child. This is one child now. That was a survey done in Ireland. Just think about that. So if you're working on 9 to 5 in the minimum wage, how are you supposed to really have 2 or 3 children? It's literally impossible. And then obviously getting them to college, you might as well become a millionaire. But yeah, it's huge worrying. And then obviously the world comes in here, and it doesn't make much sense how they can bring 5 or 6 children with them. And in Ireland it doesn't make any sense. But look at, that's the Western world in a nutshell at the moment. But it is very worrying, as I say. There's either something to do with something, We're not allowed to discuss that subject, unfortunately. We're not allowed to discuss many things to do with anything in modern society. But it is the truth, and it's not conspiracy theory. It's not a false reality. It's literally reality. When you look at the figures don't add up. As I just said, in Japan, people are living longer, which is great, of course. Everybody would agree with that. But it's the fact of the matter that more people are dying than being born. And this is the lowest in a century in Japan, take for example. Like, there needs to be questions asked, how is this the case? Because it's not just an isolated thing, as I say. And then we look at Poland, take for example, record lows, Kazakhstan. We should be asking, it'd be different if it was one isolated country. We could say, yeah, fair enough, it's an isolated incident, but it's literally across the whole world, and across mainly the Western world too. So we have to ask ourselves what's happening here, and it should be asked, and it should be found out. Because it's extremely bad, particularly as I say in Japan, but even in Europe too, it's particularly bad. But again, we're not allowed to question these things. I wish I could go into many things, because there's many things here. I have a whole list of stuff here that could be to do with it. Many people have suggested it could be this and it could be that and it could be the other. But again, it's the fact of the matter that we're not. The governments around the world, the Irish government, take us up, are not interested in having a discussion about it. And again, a fair discussion. And look at every avenue, because we have to look at every avenue, what's causing this. A lot of maybe the expenses and stuff, because that's really the only thing we can discuss. We can't discuss other stuff, unfortunately, because free speech doesn't exist in modern society. But yeah, this is severely worrying for the world, not only for the future generations. It's extremely worrying. It is really, really worrying, because as I say, a lot of people are aging, and obviously there's nobody to fill the jobs, etc., etc. That's how the migration situation, the government explained the migration. There's not enough people to work, so we had to bring in the world. That's what they would say here. There's not enough young Irish people to work, even though they're going off to Australia because they can't afford to live. It doesn't make any sense here. But we're going to bring in everybody else. Makes sense, but then with logic. But let me know what you think. As I say, I could literally stand here for an hour and talk about it. But again, you're not allowed to talk about these things. But it is very worrying. I'm sure everybody would agree. When you look at the statistics, and I'd suggest to people, even just the countries I named there, look across the whole Western world. Europe, take for example, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, even take for example, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, countries that I didn't even name here. It's right across the board, apart from maybe some countries in the Balkans area. Serbia, taking other countries, they are kind of okay, not an emergency situation, but okay. But in other regards, across Europe, it's the same story everywhere. So let me know what you think. Subscribe and went by.